You spend a lot of time reporting on taxes and plans. What do you think when you hear something like that?
Well, I will say that the Sanders plans are bold. I mean, they are so far from the status quo. They really are, I hesitate to use the word radical, but they are very far out there. How he would pay for it we can come to in a moment, because that absolutely goes right to the taxes. But apart from that, it's the philosophy of this, I think, is really a very profound difference between him and the other Democrats, and certainly Trump. Take the free trade. He is totally hostile to free trade. He's very different from Trump, though. He wants to use tariffs and other protectionist measures, but his goal is purely protectionist. It's to support American workers and American industries. It's not to use it as a weapon to increase free trade, which is what Trump has sometimes said he's trying to do, like with China. He's very pro-worker, but he has no interest in the American consumer. The cost of this, put aside the taxes, the cost of these protectionist plans in terms of higher prices is something I don't think people have focused on at all. And he certainly has no interest in shareholders. He really wants to soak corporations. And I've sort of wondered, okay, so he puts in all these protectionist policies, maybe American corporate profits go up, but then he wants to take all that money and hand it over either to the federal budget or redistribute it to the workers in these corporations. It does strike me as a very kind of 1930s view of the world where, it was much more worker, owner, labor, capitalist. It's like it doesn't seem to take into account like small businesses, entrepreneurs, startup. I mean, the economy is so much more diverse and dynamic, and the classic kind of laborer pool is really much smaller, but it seems to be getting traction.
Why do you think that kind of plan is so appealing that he would now be in the lead among potential Democratic voters?
Well, I think the rhetoric is resonating. I mean, he says, there's too much inequality, the rich are too rich. A lot of people agree with that. And I can't believe they really focused on the details of how you take that rhetoric and then translate it into policies that would significantly change that. And by the way, I think the jury is certainly out of whether this would help. I mean, other countries have gone down this path, mostly, in developed Europe, have really looked at the future and backed off from it. And they're backing away from the wealth tax. They've backed away from state ownership of, the means of production. He is doubling down on that. And I think many voters have just not gotten down into the details.
Sanders has been Sanders for years. But I wonder if you think we got Republicans in the White House running trillion-dollar deficits, if that has cleared some runway for him to be even farther out on polarity, at least, of policy.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I mean, Republicans have given up the balanced budget argument. Oddly enough, it's now the Democrats saying Trump is blowing up the deficit. But there is a sort of now prevailing sense that, deficits don't matter. And I haven't heard Sanders quite say that yet, but when he starts getting pressed about where do you come up with the extra $40 trillion, I expect we will hear something, it's clear that we have the borrowing power, we're investing in the future. I will say another spending thing that he's big on and hasn't gotten much attention, similar to Trump, although Trump hasn't done anything with it, is infrastructure. He's been calling for $1 trillion investments in infrastructure, which I actually think is a prudent use of government spending.
Yeah, 40. I mean, we have our national debt is about 23 trillion right now, somewhere in there, and we're adding to it very quickly.
We are, but this would be a scale that is so unprecedented. Again, yes. I just can't believe that voters have really focused on this very much, and I am kind of surprised that the Democratic rivals have not been hammering him more. And, people tend to lump him and Elizabeth Warren together in a lot of this stuff, but they are philosophically very different. I mean, compared to Sanders, Warren is a red-blooded capitalist.
That's what she says she is, but, yeah.
Well, she's got some pretty, redistributionist policies going there, too. They both jumped on the wealth tax. But again, as I say, philosophically, Sanders is way, way farther to the left than any candidate I've encountered in my lifetime.
Is Bloomberg making any headway with all of the millions he's spending on advertising?
Well, I think. I mean, I don't see any surge in the polls, but I think the Bloomberg strategy has always been keep the awareness out there, and when all the chips fall, people are going to realize I'm kind of the only possible candidate who could beat Trump, and then they're going to come around. So I think he's he is playing a long-term game. The spending is not aimed at polls today or tomorrow, but Super Tuesday down the road when we see more. And I think, yes, he is maintaining that awareness level with the money. It's expensive, but look, he's got the money.
Yeah, Jim, I did want to come back, as I'd mentioned, to sort of some news of the day. It's not involving this at all. It's the Justice Department potentially investigating leaks from Jim Comey, but there's a reference in the New York Times to your book, where you apparently did disclose some Russian document. What do you make of this seemingly out of nowhere investigation of Comey and this document that they're talking about that you wrote about in your book?
Yeah, well, I think I did write about that document, and I'm kind of surprised it didn't get more attention at the time. I'm hearing rumblings that it was, the references in the book that got the Justice Department interested. I don't know if that's true or not. But I think it's very worrisome that at this juncture, there seems to be this concerted effort to get Comey on something. And I don't want to comment on, where information came about this particular document. It remains a very heavily classified document. The origins of it also still very classified. But there's a lot of people who know about this document, knew about this document, knew the role it played. I reported in the book that Andrew McCabe went and gave Loretta Lynch a defensive briefing on this document. So there were a lot of people in the previous Justice Department who knew the existence of this. And when you start going at a leak, I will just say, generally speaking, as a reporter, the top person in the agency is rarely, if ever, the source of this kind of information.
Are they trying to weaponize the Department of Justice?
Absolutely. I think that pattern is now very, very clear. How many times has Comey now been investigated? Over the memos, over the other supposed leaks, no prosecution. Now they've got another one going on him. They've still got McCabe under investigation. Who knows who else they're looking into there? I do think it is a worrisome sign that how politicized the Justice Department has become and how vindictive they are to try to go at the FBI, who I still think, yes, they've made some mistakes here and there. They're human beings, but they did, heroic service to the country, and they still are doing it.